there's a flaw in the Bitcoin system. It's an inherent flaw in the system itself. The Bitcoiners do not want to talk about it. They don't want to speak about it. They don't want to go into it, but it's there and it exists. Their explanation is it'll never happen. Well, come on. Don't tell me it's never going to happen. So I figured out a way to make it happen. And that's what the novel's about. Now, I can't tell you what the flaw is because it gives away the plot of the book, but you'll learn about that in the novel. But once I realized that I could make that flaw happen, now, to do that, I needed some money. I needed some wealth. And so I used Yamashita's gold. And I've had that in my idea file for years. And it was the Japanese plundered far more than the Nazis because the Japanese did it for about 14 years. They plundered Southeast Asia. They had tons of gold, tons of silver, all kinds of things. They tried to get it back to Japan. They couldn't. They got as far as the Philippines, and it was trapped. We had blockaded off everything by that point. General Yamashita, who was in charge of the troops in the Philippines, was ordered to hide it, put it away so we could find it later. So he put 175 underground vaults, and he put the wealth in those vaults. This is all true. I'm not making any of that up. He left the way to find them with clues in the rocks, the trees, the ground, and one map. That's all, one map. Well, Yamashita was captured very quickly when the war ended. He was tried and hung in 90 days. The United States wanted him gone. They wanted him out because they wanted that money. They wanted that wealth. And they found some of it. We know for a fact that they found some of it. They took it and they put it into banks across Europe. And they called it the Black Eagle Trust. They created something called the Black Eagle Trust. And some say that money and wealth was used to finance covert intelligence operations around the globe, and it's still being used in some respects to be doing that. But it was definitely used in the 40s and 50s and 60s. We don't know that for a fact, okay? So that's what made it good for me that I could go. But there's a lot of strong evidence that may be in the case. Most of the gold's still in the ground, still there. But in my case, the Black Eagle Trust, instead of being all over the place, I put it in one bank. The oldest bank in the world, the Bank of St. George, which actually existed from 1450 to about 1805. Napoleon got rid of it. In my novel, it just kept going. I just kept it going. They moved from Italy to Luxembourg, and they're there. And so Cotton gets caught up in a war between the CIA and this Bank of St. George. And he gets in the middle of that war, and that's what the novel comes from. So in my case with this book, it was two things that really had nothing to do with one another. But once I realized what the flaw was, I knew I could use this over here to make it work.
One of the things that I love about your books, and especially the Cotton books, is that they all are rooted in real history. So you clearly read and study a lot of history. You founded History Matters, your organization for preservation. I believe you are is it an advisory emeritus of the Smithsonian Libraries?
The Smithsonian Libraries Board. I served on the library board for 6 years, and so now I get to stay forever as emeritus. It's nice. It's nice.
Well deserved. I've been on a board. Well deserved. And so I guess my question is then, have you always been a history buff?
Yes. Going back to as a teenager. It started when I was young, about 8, 9, 10 years old. And my father was a traveling salesman, so he would leave on Monday, come back on Friday. And in those days, he drove. And then eventually he flew, but he would drive in the 60s. And he would come back home with 4 or 5 books every week because he loved to read. And we put him down in the basement. My mother hated it. She couldn't stand it because there was a ton of books. And I can understand what she's saying. It's a lot of books. It was hundreds of books down there. And this wasn't an ordinary basement where it's like climate controlled and all that. I mean, you got creatures, you got things down there, And they were all on these metal shelves stacked up there. And I remember going down there and cutting on that light bulb, just one light bulb down there by the shelves, and pulling those books off and reading some of them. And they were all history books. My regret is I wish I'd kept a few of them, but it didn't, they were gone by the time I was older. But I remember that's where it came from. That's where it started, yeah. And then I kept reading the history. And I teach writing all over the world. We've taught a lot of students, about 4,000 students, and I tell students all the time, never, ever, ever write what you know. That's very bad advice. It really is bad advice. Don't ever write what you know. Write what you love. If what you know and what you love are the same thing, great, I'm with you. But if it's not, pick the one you love, okay? Now, I loved history, you know. I was a lawyer. I loved the law, but I really loved action, history, secrets, conspiracies. I really loved those things put together. And so I was a Cussler fan. I was a Robert Ludlum fan. And then I was a Dan Brown fan before Da Vinci Code, way long before Da Vinci Code. And so that's what I gravitated to. And I was able to incorporate the history and also have the fun of telling a story. But my niche is I keep everything about 90% accurate. I try to keep it as close as I can to reality. I've got to trip it up because I'm here to entertain you. And that's why I put the writer's note in the back to tell you what I lied about, what I didn't lie about, basically. But usually the writer's note you're reading, you're thinking it's false. And you find out it's true. And I do that on purpose. I want to make sure. I don't trip up much. This book, very little that I had to trip up from reality.
So this book is, I want to get it right, the 18th Cotton book?
Correct.
Yeah, so 18 books with the same protagonist. Even for a history buff like yourself, how difficult is it to keep coming up with scenarios to put Cotton in the middle of?
It is getting harder. I won't say that, because after you write 18 books, you've got him. He does a lot in those 18 books. But luckily, I'm okay for 25, 26, and 27. I'm okay. I'm okay there. Yeah, I try to stay 2-3 years ahead of you, is what I try to do. I'm writing the book right now that'll publish in 25 and getting ready to start the one that'll publish in 26. It takes me a year to write it, so but I'm almost finished up with 25. So I stay about a year to 2 years, and in some cases 3 years ahead of you, because of the research involved. These books I can't write in 3 months. It takes 18 months to put one of these together. So I have to plan them out to stay in that cycle so that I can deliver the book on time and publish one a year. And, you know, I'm just lucky it keeps coming. I mean, yeah, I live in that fear that one day I'll just say, well, I don't know what to do with him anymore. But I'm okay till 28. Then but between now and 28, there's certain places I'd like to do. I'd love to do a book in Scotland. I haven't yet, and I want to do that, very much so. I'd love to do a book in the South Pacific, and I haven't done that yet with him. So there are areas that I want to explore, yes.
Let's talk a little bit about that research process. It takes you just a year to write these
A year
books.
to write, 18 months total.
Okay, so what does your research look like to produce a book that's so accurately rooted in history?
Well, I have to first get the ooh thing, the thing you say ooh about. And the reason why I know that is that when I wrote The Third Secret, they said, what's the next book about? And I said, The Templars. And everybody would go, ooh. So I call it the ooh factor. If I can get you to go ooh, like the next book I'm going to write is about the Medici family of Florence. See? So you find the ooh factor. So for me, it's like Charlemagne or Paris or Malta or, you know, these kinds of the Knights of Malta, all these things you come up with that can get the ooh. And then I have to have a so what. Who cares about the Ember Room being found? Who cares about Yamashita's gold? What does it matter? It has to still matter today. So I call that the so what. The ooh and the so what. Now, there's a lot of thrillers today you'll read that have pretty good ooh factor, but no so what. Then they'll have a so what, but no real ooh. You need them both. You need them both. And that's hard to do because once you get those two, now you've got the formula, now you're ready. And then I go find books, about 300 to 400 books.
300 to 400?
300 to 400 books. There's a used bookshop in Jacksonville, Florida. I used to live a half hour away. Now I live 3 hours away. But I go about several times a year. I used to go every 4 or 5 weeks. It's huge. I mean, it's tremendous. And his history section is probably 10,000 volumes. And it changes every day because people are bringing books in by the box loads every day. And like here, I would go in and find, well, like this, I wanted to find Bitcoin. He had hundreds of Bitcoin books. And I just throw them all in a box, and I buy them, and I take them home, and I start going through them. It's a treasure hunt. I don't read 300 books, but I read large chunks of 300 books. Yes, I do. And I need a good index, because that'll narrow down what I have to go in and read. And I make notes, and they're about this tall when I'm done. They're huge, but I'm only going to use a tiny little fraction of those notes. But they're all there if I need them. And as I read the books, the plot begins to form, and that's done 6 months before I start writing the novel. That's why I say it's 18 months. So it's being done while I'm writing the book before that one. So right now I'm doing that for the 2026 book, because I'm writing 25, which I'll be done with soon. So then I'm ready to go. I don't have to delay. I can start and go at that point. And so I go through it. Then when I'm done, I put all those books in a box, take them back, trade them back in. They give me credit, and I start all over again. And I've been doing that for 34 years. So he knows, Ron Chamblin owns it. He knows when I'm finished with a book, because I'll bring in boxes and I'll throw them up there. He said, we're done with another one. Yep. Yeah. Now he only gives me half to bring them back, but I don't keep them. There's too many books. But I'm old style. I don't use a lot of ebooks in research because the indexes don't work. If I use an ebook, I got to go through the page by page, every page of it. And occasionally I do, because it's the only way you can get the book. There's no hard copies of it anywhere to be found. But I prefer actual books, and particularly books I buy on site when I take a trip to. Like here, we went to the Atlas Mountains in Morocco, so we were there, and I came home with a stack of stuff, for that.
Yeah. Wow. That's great. I wish a trip to the Atlas Mountains was a thing I had to do for my job. That sounds amazing.
It sounds fun, but I'll be honest with you, it's a little nerve-wracking, because you don't know what. If I knew what I wanted, I wouldn't have to go. I got to go find it. There, I have to go find it. I have to literally go find the locations, the places, everything I'm looking for. I have to hunt it, and we're not there forever. We do like 3 or 4 days. And so it can become a little nerve-wracking if you don't find what you're looking for. Thankfully, we did. There's a Richard Branson, who owns Virgin Air. He has a hotel there. He bought an estate in the Moroccan mountains. It's beautiful. Up in the mountains. If you ever go, stay there. It's beautiful, and it's just like another world down there.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So, 18th Cotton Malone book. I have to ask a question about the universe of Cotton Malone, because I've been reading these for a while, and it sounds like we will have many more to enjoy in the years to come. And so for all these years, Cotton Malone is still running, shooting, doing all of these things of a 35, 40-year-old person. Is Cotton aging? No, tell me about that.
He was in the beginning. The first few books I did, and then one day we were at Thriller Fest, and Clive Cussler was there, and I sat down with Clive, and I was telling him, I said, I can't keep doing this. And he said, I quit aging Dirk Pitt like 30 years ago. And he's right, he did. I mean, Dirk's, like 50 something years old. He's got two 30-year-old children, they came out of nowhere, and so he said, I just stopped. And that's what I did. I stopped. He has not aged in about 10, 12 years. It's just, if you'll notice in the novels, I say he's staring down 50. I used to say 47, but I just say staring down 50. And with Cassiopeia, she's looking at 40. She's looking at it. She's not there yet, but she's looking at it. So, and I stopped all aging in the book. So in their world, their adventures are just happening, and then they happen again. And then they're like Groundhog Day. They go over and over with a new adventure. And it's the only way you can do it, because otherwise he'd be 80 years old and that'd be the end of it. And so I just stopped. Yeah, he gets to keep doing it. Now, I reference some of the previous adventures, but just, I always say a few weeks ago or a month ago or something like that. I say it, so I keep the timeline. Clive taught me that. I learned that from him.
So the fact that time has stopped in here, is that also why Cotton and Cassiopeia haven't married yet?
Yeah, there's somebody who wants them to get married over there. And I'm not saying that they won't, but and I used to I didn't want to marry, and I'll tell you why. Well, first off, I didn't want Cotton to be monogamous to start with, because I wanted to have a new lady friend come in the picture, because it's more fun as a writer. You can bring in new characters, and you can bring that in, and you can do it. But then and I actually broke them up at the end of one of the novels, and she did not like that at all. She came in and threw that was back when you had manuscripts, and she threw that thing down the desk. She says, "That ain't happening. You ain't doing it. You ain't doing that." And then I thought about it, and I said, "Yeah, probably not." I kind of like her. I like Cassiopeia a lot. I didn't want to do it, but you run out of things to do with a character sometimes, and you got to, when you run out, you need to move on, and get something. But I've decided that they could actually marry and live in different places, because my agent is married to another agent. He lives in New York, she lives in London, and neither one of them are going to move. And they go back and forth. And they have a great marriage, and it works out great. So I said, well, maybe we could make it work. Yeah, because she's not going to leave her castle, and he's not going to leave his bookshop. So maybe we might see marriage. It's possible. It's possible. I'm not going to say. I don't know. We'll see. She lobbies hard for it, though. Mm-hmm. Why? I know. Cotton is basically me, and Cassiopeia is her. Because when I created the characters, I did not think I was going to write 18 books with him. I was not that arrogant. I just wanted to write one, and hopefully maybe two if we're lucky. And so I just used me. It was just easier to use me. And then Elizabeth came along, and I just created Cassiopeia and used her personality. And there are actual fights in there that we've had with actual dialogue that nobody knows that but me and her, but it's actually in there. And so it just worked out well that way, and it just grew, and it grew, and it grew. And now here we are, 18 books and 20 years later. Mm-hmm.
Congratulations. Well, I know we want to leave time for audience questions, so I think I have time to ask one more question.
Yeah.
You mentioned Cotton's bookshop, which reminded me of something that one of the characters says in the very last chapter of this book. And don't worry, I'm not going to give anything away. But they're talking about books, or having a memory about books. And one of the characters says, "Books are amazing. Words on a page that transport us. We can switch off from everything, never notice the time passing, and experience smells, sounds, sights, and emotions from all over time and place. It's like chewing gum for the eyes." So I wanted to ask you.
They're not my words.
What's that?
They're not my words.
They're
No. There's a lady.
Yeah.
That chewing gum from the eyes. A lady said it one night.
Really?
She did. We were at an event, and she said it, and I said, "That is just really cool. Can I use that?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "That is just really. I've never thought about that before." So what that chewing gum from the eyes is not mine; it's hers. And and I said, "It's just perfect. I mean, use it." She loved it, so that's why I used it. Is that what you value in books? Do you think of them as chewing gum?
Oh,
yeah, that's perfect. She was just perfect for it. It was a great analogy. It said it the way these characters would have said it, and it's very good. It's just a way of thinking about a book in a very simplistic way, but a wonderful way. And when she said it, I said, "Wow, that's just perfect." I'm trying to remember who it is, though. I can't remember her name now, but it was a while back. It was a long time ago.
Well, I loved it. That quote really jumped out at me.
I wrote it down, and I kept it for a long time, and then finally got to use it in there.
Yeah. Well, if you love chewing gum, or if you love thrillers, you're going to love The Atlas Maneuver. I enjoyed the heck out of it. And so, Steve, thank you for letting me talk with you today. This has been great.
Let's have some questions.
Yeah.
What's on your mind out there? Anything? Oh, yes, sir?
Asked him if he regretted killing off anybody, you the same question.
I've only killed one, and I did not regret. I had an older gentleman in the first 6 or 7 books, Henrik Tervalsen, and I got to the Paris Vendetta, and I'd kind of run out of something to do with him. He's when you have a character, you got to do something with him. You can't just ignore them. And I just kind of run out of things. And in the Paris Vendetta, he crosses a line. He murders. He doesn't kill someone in self-defense or in the heat of passion because he's defending himself, or he just murders 2 people. And so he crossed a moral line, and I didn't know what I was going to do with him. And the great writer James Rollins, my friend, told me, he said, just kill him. It's not a problem. Kill him. I said, okay. So I killed him. I got a lot of flack from it, but I don't mind it because I brought in Danny Daniels, another character, so I had some fun with that. I will say in the coming 3-4 books, there's going to be some changes in Cotton's world. So we may be experiencing that again. We're going to, Cotton's world is going to get a little change up to it a little bit. And so that way I can shift a little bit and I can have some new things that interest me because I have to be interested in it too. And we can't keep things going forever. Even Dirk Pitt, it changed up. They're not, over time. So I don't regret killing Henrik, no. But he's the only one so far that I've killed. Yes, ma'am.
I've actually been to that bookstore in Jacksonville.
Mm-hmm.
It's really wonderful.
It is, isn't it?
I have a cousin that lives down there, but I have to say I've enjoyed many of the books, so I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. And the cool thing about the Chamberlain Book Barn, I've been going there for 44 years. And they have the shelf, where your fiction is. And if you, like your Cussler, you have a little piece of cardboard that says Cussler. Or if you're Ludlum, because, they have so many books. We call those shelf talkers in the business. When you see them in the bookstores, they put them down there. But they do it there just to organize it. So when you go down the shelf, you're looking for Cussler, you look for that. So my dream was to always have one of those. I always wanted one because this was back in the 90s before I was published and everything. And now I have one there. I have my shelf and it has my name, which is really cool to see. Yeah. Yes. She had her hand up right there. Go ahead. Yes, ma'am.
Do you listen to your audiobooks?
Just a little snippet here and there. I like to hear how Scott pronounces some of the foreign words, because I don't know how to say them. And so a little bit here and there. I love the way he does things, though. He does a great job with it. And I got to pick him, so it was great. He's done all my books but 3. He's done everything but 3. Yes, ma'am, back here.
I've read The Amber Room, and then I read The Romanov Prophecy. We didn't have Cotton out. Were you ever going to bring back those characters?
I would like to find out what happened to Miles Lord in the Romanov Prophecy. Where did he go? Whatever happened to that guy? I would love to revisit. I'd like to team him up with Waylon McCoy from the Amber Room, but I need to clean his mouth up. He won't cuss like he did in that book. I don't have any, those of you who haven't read me, I don't use cuss words very much, maybe a damn or a hell, and that's about it. But in the Amber Room, Waylon McCoy had a terrible mouth. And I realized after I wrote that I didn't really need to do that anymore, and I quit doing it. But I'd love to team him up with Miles Lord. That'd be a fun book. They would, and they would rub each other raw for a while, and it'd be interesting to see those two together. Colin Mitchner came back in the Venetian Betrayal for a little bit from The Third Secret, but I would like to see whatever happened to Colin. And I don't know, we might get a chance to. The problem in the thriller business, what you have to be careful with, you cannot write sequels, meaning a sequel is you had to have read the first one, or else you lost. You got to write a brand new book, so that if someone reads the second one, it doesn't matter if they read the first one or not. But that's not as much fun. No, it's not, see? And in the thriller, now in the romance business, you can do it. In the mystery business, you can do it. You can't do it in the thriller business. And so that's what's probably discouraged me from doing it. But you never know. Now, Nick Lee from the Omega Factor, I probably will revisit him again. Because I actually started that when we did Omega, I actually wanted that to become another series.
Well, thank you very much. I've read all your.
Thank you for reading me. Thank you. Over here, yes?
I haven't read any.
That's great. No, I like that. I like new readers. I've
read one. Why Cotton as a first name?
Well, it wasn't my name. I actually named him something else, and I was in a writer's group at the time. Anybody been in a writer's group? Yeah, it's a group of people. You go each week, you read a chapter, and everybody destroys it. Literally destroys it. And you go through this critical process to learn the craft of writing. Well, I had named him something else. And one of the ladies in the group looked at me and said, "That's the stupidest name I've ever heard in my life." I said, "Well, okay, what do you want to call him?" She said, "Let's call him Cotton." I said, "Done." And I thanked her, and she's thanked in Templar legacy. David gave him his name. Now, he's Harold Earl Cotton Malone. And in all the books, they ask, "How did you get the name Cotton?" He says, "Long story." Well, the long story is The Lost Order, the novel, The Lost Order. We explain his name in The Lost Order. So if you want to find out about the name, you read Lost Order, you'll find out how he got it. He's named for my father, who was Harold Earl Sam Berry. He was called Sam all his life, and he had no idea. He has no idea why he was called Sam. He just always was called Sam. So I did the same with Cotton, but there is a reason. It's an interesting story too that's true from the Civil War. The Lost Order is a book about the Civil War. So I think you might interesting treasure from the Civil War. Oh, Mia, yeah.
How long did it take you to publish your first book?
A long time. Yes. From the day I wrote my first word to the day I sold my first word was 12 years. During that time, I wrote 8 manuscripts. 5 went to New York publishing houses. They were rejected 85 times. I made it the 86th time 12 years after I started, and that was The Amber Room, which was the 4th manuscript I ever wrote. And then they bought the 5th, which was the Romanov prophecy. They bought the 6th, which was the Third Secret. So they did buy 3. One of the others made it as the Kaiser's Web many years later. So 4 of those 5 have actually made it. The rest of them have been cannibalized and used in various books along the way. But it was a long process for me, and that's why I say all the time, I may not know anything about writing, but I'm a world-class expert on rejection. I understand it. And 12 years, a long time, be told no. It was a long time. But I made it, and I got a shot at it, and here I am. Yes? We hope so. It'd be nice, wouldn't it? There's just a lot of talk. They talk, and they talk, and they talk, and they talk. So we'll see. We'll see. It may happen. I will say of late, the talk has been a little more focused, which is encouraging. Very encouraging. So we'll see if it happens. I think it'd be really cool. I think these would be great. Like a 8-part, 10-part Netflix series or Amazon series or something. Be great. I think it'd be great. Yeah. Oh, yes, ma'am.
So who would you want,
Well, I've been asked that many times. I suspect if it ever happens, it'll be someone none of us really suspect. But I would say, like Chris Pine could be. That's how I envision Cotton. I don't envision Cotton like Daniel Craig. He's not that way. But he's an ordinary guy. Chris Pine could do it. I used to say like Michael Weatherly from NCIS could do it. I saw him the other night. He was in the NCIS show Monday night. He made a guest star appearance. And I looked at him. I said, yeah, he could be Cotton. Yeah, he could. I suspect it'll be an actor that we may not know a lot about, if I had to guess, if we ever got to that point. But he needs to be kind of an ordinary fellow, because Cotton's he doesn't work out. He doesn't run 20 miles a day. But he can do extraordinary things when called upon. And that's what I want. I always thought him like George Clooney, not Daniel Craig. But Clooney's too old now to play him. Somebody had a hand over here.
Yeah, a lot of authors, as they become well-known, kind of develop a group of underwriters, so to speak. Your thoughts on that, and would you ever consider that?
Well, I have a friend of mine. We write the Luke Daniels books together, but he's not an underling. He's a #1 New York Times bestselling writer, so he's very good at what he does, and we write those together. Luke Daniels, I did one last year called The Ninth Man. There'll be another one coming June 11th called Red Star Falling, and there'll be another one in 2026. So we do those together, and it's enjoyable. I like it. I've done novellas with M.J. Rose, and again, she's an accomplished New York Times bestseller as well. I don't really have a whole cadre of underling writers that I could call upon, but I know a lot of them, and if I needed to hire one, I certainly could. And there's some very talented thriller writers out there. I would very much love to have 4 or 5 and do 4 or 5 different series where I could just conceive them and be the producer and the director and not necessarily the actual writer of every word, because I have a lot of story ideas up here. It'd be fun to get them out. It really would be fun to do, but I suspect that might not happen. Yes?
What kept you motivated and resilient in the times that you were getting rejected?
What kept me going in the rejection time? Well, there's a simple answer, and those of you who are writers will know this answer. It's a little voice in your head. And every writer I know has a little voice in their head. And the voice doesn't say, write a bestseller, sell a bunch of books, come to the Mark Twain house and be interviewed. It doesn't say any of that. It says, I need you to sit down and write. I don't care if it's terrible, awful, horrible. You need to write. You need to sit down. And that little voice kept me going. And I still have it to this day. That little voice keeps me going right now. Now, when that little voice quits talking to you, you're done. That's when you're finished. But I know writers who have gone to their grave, 90 years old, still doing it, and still got it. But I also know writers who the voice went silent. So I don't want the voice to go silent. So if you're a writer, listen to the little voice. I ignored the voice for 10 years. All during the 1980s, I ignored the voice till 1990. That's when I started to write. But I didn't publish till 2003. So just listen to the voice. Keep writing, hang in there, and one day Lady Luck will give you a break, because that's what she did to me. She felt sorry for me after 12 years. She said, I beat you over the head for 12 years. You're still here. Today is your day. And it came. Yes, sir. Yes. Let me do it. I'll be right there. Yes.
What was it about the Luke Daniels character of all the other characters that you've incorporated? What was his moment that made you kind of bring him more to the forefront?
Well, I didn't create Luke. Elizabeth created Luke because she said we need a hot character. Hot young character, I believe she said. And Cotton took great offense to that. Great offense. He said, excuse me? You said hot young character. Yes, you did. And so I took her to heart, so I created him because I wanted a character who could make mistakes and screw up like Cotton would have done when he was younger, and learn from it and grow. And it was fun to have Luke. And Luke is growing. In his own books, he's getting much more accomplished, much more confident in what he does. I like Luke. He's a fun character. And he's got a good attitude about him, and he's made fun. I would love for Cassiopeia to have her own book too, though. I think she would be great to have her own book. So, I possibly might go there next and let her have her own adventure on her own. So Luke just kind of grew as a counterbalance to Cotton. Their first meeting is not very amicable at all. They don't get along. In fact, he decks him he decks him to the ground. But they've grown on each other. Luke calls Cotton Pappy, and Cotton calls him frat boy. They don't get along, but they've saved each other's butts several times now. So I've enjoyed him. He's fun, but Cotton's hot too. He didn't like that at all. He was very offended by that. Somebody had a hand. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I think Chris Cummings is adorable. So.
I think you would be good for it. Yeah.
When you were working on your novel for 12 years, were you still lawyering?
Yes. I was a lawyer up until book 8. Yeah, I did 12 years of rejection, got published, did 8 books, and it got to the point where I had to choose. It had grown so much that I couldn't do both. I had my own office. It was just me. I was practicing law 5 days a week, 12, 14 hours a day. I was in court 3-4 days every week, and it was a lot. And then finally one day I had to choose, and it was risky. It was scary because I made a good living as a lawyer. The money I made as a writer, I didn't need it. It was just gravy money. I didn't need a dime of it. I made a very good living, and I closed everything, sold the building, shut it down. It was frightening, scary, but she made me do it. She made me do it. She made me do it. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
You say you don't age the characters.
Right.
How does that work with trying to keep with modern, what's going on in the current world?
It just happens. It just happens, and their world just stays like it is. It's like they magically get transformed. And what it happens is I'll do an adventure, and then the next adventure he'll say, "Well, I was in Tuscany a month ago," or whatever happened in Tuscany 2 weeks ago. I keep it tight. Really tight. And the reader doesn't really notice or mind it. That's what Clive told me. He said they really don't pay that close attention to that. It's not something that's significant to them. And he's right. They don't. They don't really get to it because I don't dwell on it. But I can't age him. I mean, I want him to go forever. I don't want him to stop. And John Sanford did the same thing with his character, and he was there that day when we were talking to Clive, and we were all. And then I also did something else to Cotton. If you'll notice, in the early books, there was always a personal motivation involved. His son was involved. His ex-wife was involved. There's always a personal motivation, but I ran out of them. And John Sanford and I were talking about that, and he said, "Yeah, I have too." So we just decided, let's let them work for money. I mean, they just do it for the money, And that's what. So about I don't know, somewhere around Lincoln Myth, it began to change where he just does it for the money, But there's still a little personal motivation, but it's not the overriding thing in there. Changing up with the new characters, though, gives me the ability to get back to personal motivation, though. This book deals with something very personal to Cotton. Who's read it? How many have read it? That's good. Okay, I'm not going to give anything away, but every novel I explore another aspect of Cotton's personality. I do a different aspect. This novel deals with regret. And there's a big regret that he has to deal with in this book that is setting things up to come down the road. So this is sort of a beginning for Cotton on a new journey.
I want to just check in because I'm sure you're going to be signing books,
Yes,
right,
ma'am.
Steve? So
Yes,
I
ma'am.
want to make sure we have time. Omar, how are we doing?
We have 15 minutes.
Oh, can we keep going?
We have plenty of time for questions.
Let them ask.
great.
Let them ask.
Great, yeah.
I have one about how do you keep like a master script? So even though you keep the timeline kind of tight, I notice with authors that write a lot of serials like Daniel Silva or others, it gets to the point where you have to almost keep biographies.
I wish I had. Yeah, I know. I didn't do it. So I have to go hunt that down to make sure I got it right. I was warned years ago, keep do that. And I said, I said, well, I'll never be writing this thing 18 books, I'll do 4 or 5, that'll be the end of it. But I wish I had now because there's a lot of little details that I have to try to remember. She remembers a lot. And we had a reader, or we were trying today, trying to remember what it was a while back. She knew everything. She was like a walking encyclopedia, man. I could just send her an email. Yeah, she'd tell me exactly. It was lovely to have that resource. But what I do now is I'm careful not to do a lot of reference to the past things. So I'll make sure I get it right. But I should have, if you're going to write a series, do it. Write it down. I should have done it. Other questions? In the back, yes.
It's not a question, but I just wanted to acknowledge all the places that you and your wife go, because the historic places and like the salt mines in Poland and all that, I would never know these places existed.
That's part of the books. I want.
And I really enjoyed
Thank
that
you.
aspect of it.
I try to have the places become characters. So they're not backdrop, they're essential to the plot. They're part of the plot. And we try to find places that you may not have heard of or been to because we want to, expose that. And we've been to the salt mines. They're incredible. And it made for a perfect backdrop for what I used there, and the mind figured into the plot, actually, up to the story as well. So I make a point of that of every book. Not to repeat places. That's another thing. I have to find new spots. But we're doing okay. We've got a new spot here. We've got a new spot. Next year's Tuscany. It's Tuscany with the Medici. And we were there last summer. It was beautiful. And so it's great. And then we're going to do, we've got some new spots coming after that too. We'll be going in April to research one of those. Yes.
Which one was you were in abroad?
Czech Republic would have been Columbus Affair.
Because I think you mentioned the old cemetery.
Yes.
I was there shortly after I read the book.
Hmm.
And it was like, in my mind, I'm saying, oh, this is what he mentioned.
Hmm. We walked that cemetery for days. And yeah. The old synagogue, new old synagogue, and the golem in the tile.
I had just read the book.
Yep.
And it's like, this is fascinating.
Yeah, we did all the research there. We would have spent 5 days there doing the research, putting all that together. We've been to Prague 4 or 5 times, but then a novel occurred to me, and we went back and did specific research. You should go. It's magnificent. It's a beautiful, beautiful city. Yes, ma'am? Yes, sir?
Are you going to be doing any more of those trips?
Yeah, there'll be a one in May of 25 to Tuscany. And you'll see something on that soon. Yeah, we do what's called the Steve Barry and Fans trip. I didn't create it. I don't make any money on it. I don't do anything. I just go for a week, and we take the readers to the sites, like we did Poland. We went there for the Warsaw Protocol, and I took them to Wawel Castle, showed them all the scenes, how I did it up there. We went down in the salt mines. We saw all those. We went over Krakow, saw all that. Went up to Czestochowa, which is the Polish Vatican, and saw all that. And I showed them how I put the novel together and how I assembled it and how I used the actual location right there on the ground. And we've done about 7 of those. And they're great. They're fun. They're put together by a travel agency out of Salt Lake City who came up with the idea. Author fan travel, they call it. And so in May of 25, we'll be going to Tuscany. Yes. Yes.
After so many years in the thriller business, do you still enjoy reading thrillers?
I do. I like thrillers. I'd read about maybe 4 or 5 a year. I don't have the time anymore because I'm reading those 300 to 400 books on the other stuff. But I do love thrillers. Yes, I do. I enjoy Cussler still. I enjoy Jim Rollins, and I enjoy Dan, of course. Silva's books, Baldacci's. Every once in a while I get the treat of reading a thriller. Yes, I do. I just read Jim's book, Tides of Fire. That was the new one. Other questions? Yes, ma'am?
You worked with Diana Gabaldon on a short story.
I did.
Have you read all her books?
I read the first one. Yeah. She's lovely, and we did an anthology for ITW to raise money for it, and it was male-female writers, and she did me. She wanted to be with me, so it was great. We got to write. So Jamie Fraser and Cotton Malone got to meet each other. And does Cotton go back in time? Does he go through the stones? I don't know. You don't know. It's an interesting story. She was lovely to work with because I'm very short story challenged. I'm not good at short stories. They're hard. But she is good. So she wrote the first draft, and she wrote it in first person, all Cotton, which I thought was really sweet of her to do. And then I rewrote it into first person present tense, all Cotton. And it turned out really well. It's in an anthology called Face Off, but you can buy the story by itself on Amazon or Nook. They have it up there. It's Past Prologue, right? Yes, that's what it is. Past Prologue is what it's called. Yeah, I think it is that. Yeah. No, that's the one with her. Past Prologue, I believe it is. And it was fun, that he got to meet Jamie Fraser. Other questions? Yes, sir?
Your themes are so thought-provoking. This one, I think you kind of referred to it before. I'm a little vague. It's been a while since I read it, but the one about where the queen could have been a boy, so easily boy. So
I think it's very plausible, actually. Yeah, I would have told you. The Busy Boy legend is, for 300 years in a small village called Bisley in central England, on a day certain every year, they dressed a young boy up in Elizabethan costume, like a queen, and paraded him through the streets. Now, why did they do that for 300 years? There's a reason why they did it. There is a reason why they did it. And the legend is that Queen Elizabeth I was not female. She was male. And there's a reason why that happened too. And I thought that you're crazy. But when I got done with that, I think it's very possible, if not probable, that it was. Yeah. And then the novel explores all of that and gives you all of what I learned from that. Now, there's a very easy way to prove it all wrong. Open up the grave, marry her sister, who became Queen Mary after Henry's son Edward died young. He only ruled a month or two. He died. Mary became, a Catholic queen again. They called her Bloody Mary because she killed so many people, but she was buried, and then Elizabeth succeeded her. Now, those two women hate each other. They hated each other with a passion, yet they were buried together. And it says on the side of the tomb so that their bones could mingle. Now, if you open that tomb up, you better find the bones of a 73-year-old woman, which is what Queen Elizabeth was, and a 40-something-year-old woman, who's Mary, who are tied together by their paternal DNA. If you don't, you got a problem. That tomb has never been opened, not even during the British Civil War. They desecrated all those tombs. They never opened that one. And they will not open it. They will not bring it up. When the book came out, we had a 2-page spread in the London Times. Huge article they did. And of course, they all said, let's open it up. Let's open it up. No. And there's a reason why that would be really bad. And the novel tells you that. I don't want to give it away if anybody hasn't read it, but there's a reason that matters today why that would be a very bad thing to happen. Yeah, so that was a fun book to write. I think that book would make a terrific 10-part Netflix series or something. It really would be, but who knows? I mean, I had a lot of fun with that book. In the back, yes.
You've talked a couple of times about possible movies and Netflix and so forth, and in my somewhat limited experience with that, because I prefer the books to the movies, it's because so much nuance gets lost.
It does.
And your books are so dense with history
Mm-hmm.
and facts, but you don't sound at all concerned about that happening.
No, as long as they give me a big enough check. Now, if they don't give me a big enough check, I'm going to be with you on that. I'm going to say it's a problem. But you have to have that attitude, really, because they're going to change it. They've asked me, I've been optioned 15, 20 times, and some of the options got really serious, like they were getting down. They always ask me the question, what do you want me to do? And I would say, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I don't know how to make movies. I don't know how to do any of that stuff. But I will say one thing for you. You're buying my book not because you love my book or my story, even though it's good, you like it, I got it, but you can hire a screenwriter to write a story. You don't need me for that. You're buying my audience. That's what they're buying. They want the audience that comes with it so they don't have to market to that audience. It'll just come. The bigger your audience, the more they pay you. That's how it works. The first question they ask you when they come to buy your book, first question out of their mouth, how many books you sold? That's all they want to know. That's all they want to know, how many books you sold. They want to know how big your audience is. So I told them, I said, if that's the case, please don't change something unnecessarily. If you have to change it, I got it. But you don't have to change it. I don't know if you ever watched the Cussler movie with Matthew McConaughey. Well, Clive hated that movie. He hated that movie so bad. He hated it. Because they changed things unnecessarily. Like Numa wasn't a government agency anymore. It was a rogue agency doing crazy stuff. Why did you have to change that? Why couldn't it just be Numa, government agency? Because when you're watching it as a Cussler fan, you're going, well, this has nothing to do with the book I read, and you made the changes unnecessarily. That's the only thing I ask from them. And they will all say, yeah, but they'll change it anyway. They're going to do what they want to do. But it makes no sense to me that you pay me a lot of money to buy my audience, then you alter the material so much that it's unrecognizable to the audience you bought it for. It boggles my mind. It's like did you watch Perry Mason on HBO? The remake, it was 2 seasons. Wonderful show, except it had nothing to do with Perry Mason. Nothing whatsoever to do with Perry Mason that we know of, that we know about. They changed everything. They altered everything in there. Made no sense. It was a great show, but it was just another lawyer named Perry Mason. It wasn't that. And it only lasted 2 seasons. They got, because the readers couldn't identify with it, couldn't grab to it. It was changed unnecessarily. That's what I'm saying. I was ranting there a little bit, but I hope I get to that point where that's a problem, by the way. We call that a champagne problem, if that actually happens. Yes, sir.
The last question kind of brought up this question. Have you gotten some bad reactions or official intimidation or something from some of the things you talked about?
Yes. We get some emails that are not very nice. Nothing threatening. No, just mainly, academic kind of things. I will have to say, in fairness to myself, I don't get many emails saying I got it wrong. That are just wrong. I make some mistakes and they point them out and I fix them in the next edition. I do. Occasionally I'll get a historical something wrong and I fix it. But see, sometimes I make educated guesses. And those are usually where I make an educated guess. I mean, you can't imagine. You read 300 books on the same subject, you're going to see how wrong 300 books are because they contradict each other. They contradict each other constantly. And sometimes I have to make educated guesses as to what it to be. So, but I haven't got any threatening or anything in all, but just people disagree with me. Yes, ma'am?
I just want to say, I like how at the end you tell us what's true and what's not. So I just want to thank you for that.
Yeah, I don't want you to leave the book. I want you to have a full understanding. And hopefully it'll spur you to read some other stuff, because I usually refer to 2 or 3 books in that thing, and hopefully you'll do it. There's a couple in here that are referred to that you could, if you want to learn more about the Black Eagle Trust and what the CIA may have done with that money in the 1940s, there's books on that.
Well, Steve, this has been wonderful. I think we are unfortunately out of time. I know I could.
Is that what this guy's for over here?
That is our signal.
Yeah, okay.
Omar, any last words from you, or should we just wrap it up?
Thank you so much. Thank you to both of you for being here. Thanks to our audience. Steve is going to be signing books out in the lobby. Please visit the store as well if you haven't already.
I enjoyed it. Thank you for coming out this freezing night. Y'all wear this thick stuff y'all wear. I don't know what it is. Where I come from, we don't wear that. And we're in Florida. We don't. They said something called a coat. We don't have a coat.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much. That was great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's fine.
Let's actually go this way.
I'll follow you.
Yeah. Just so you won't just leave that there.